Welcome to Mum Abroad's interview of the week. I'm joined today by Morag Makey. She's been working in the International Baccalaureate for 13 years. She trains counsellors and teachers, and she also works with individual students and their families to support with the IB and to help them with university applications. Hi Morag, thanks for joining me today.
Hi Jane, thanks very much for having me.
This is going to be a particularly interesting interview for me because my daughter is in the first year of the IB Diploma Programme. Yeah. So, Morag, can we start off by you telling us what exactly is the IB?
So IB stands for International Baccalaureate, and there are actually 3 phases to the program: the primary years program, the middle years program, and the diploma program. And I work mostly in the diploma program phase, which is for 16 to 19-year-olds in their last stage of secondary school. So for people familiar with the UK model of schooling, it's A-levels or sixth form. And it's the final qualification for students to go off to university. And the IB was born out of a desire for progressive education and a qualification that would be universally recognised and allow student mobility. And the IB does all of those things. But most of all, it was created really by a group of people wanting a different kind of education and to educate for a better world. So the idea is that IB students come out with philosophical beliefs and qualities that enable them to contribute to a different kind of society. And there's something in the IB mission statement, the line that says that other people with their differences can also be right. And that's something that really resonates with me because I think particularly at the moment, we really need to be listening to other perspectives and understanding other people with empathy and kindness. I think today might be World Kindness Day. And really thinking about, the contribution that we're going to make in a rapidly changing society. And so the IB is designed to do that and to keep up with the times and produce students or young adults that are going to go into society and do something a little bit different.
When we were doing research about the IB, making a decision for my daughter to decide what she was going to study, I read that the IB was about making citizens of the world, and that really appealed to me.
Yeah, and the idea is that they would be internationally minded, lifelong learners. Those are the catchphrases of the IB, that it's creating global citizens. So you're right about that, Jane.
So, Morag, what would be the typical profile of an IB student?
I don't think that there is one. There's always a lot of discussion in schools and among, with families that I work with about whether or not the IB is for gifted and talented students. There's always, the talk about how challenging it might be, and it certainly is a challenging but really stimulating program and a really rewarding program. So when I'm looking at the profile of a student to go into the IB, what I'm looking for are the traits that mean that they'll be successful in that kind of philosophy and in that kind of future. And I think every student, whatever their ability, can take part in that. And so, the maximum score in the IB is 45 points, but the passing grade is 24 points. And I get a lot of satisfaction from seeing students get through the IB with 24 points, but a really marked change in their attributes and character and commitment and perseverance. And I think the IB does all of those things. So with really careful consideration and counselling about subject choices and future directions, I think the IB can be for any student.
It definitely has a reputation for being academically challenging. How true do you think that is?
It's definitely true, and I think that you hear a lot about IB workload and stress and anxiety, and sometimes I think maybe that reputation precedes it and makes students a little bit scared, and then families sometimes get caught in that as well. It is challenging, but I think a student who can get organised and get on top of things to meet deadlines and keep up with work and keep up with revision, those students can succeed. And I talked about the point score. I've seen students who should be achieving 45 points get beaten by their lack of organisation. And I see students getting 24 points who got there because they were organised. They had to work hard every single day of their diploma, but they got there through organisation and time management. A lot of what I do is working with students on exactly that: time management, organisation, regular revision. It's a 2-year program. It's not modular. It's not theme-based or topic-based. You know, things aren't done in units. So there are big exams at the end of 2 years, and that can be really tough for some students, but not if there are, you know, practices in place for regular revision and revisiting concepts and preparing for those exams in a strategic sort of way.
I know that it can be a stressful 2 years for the students, and you're particularly interested in the well-being of these students. So do you think that things like organisation skills are key for the students to handle the stress that they might be under?
Absolutely, and I think that habit has to start really early. So I actually start working with students in grade 9, getting them ready for the IB, talking to them about their choices, making sure that those align with their university pathways, but also with their personality, with their academic talents. Obviously, we don't know what all students are going to be good at when they're in grade 9. They have a lot of developing to do in those years. So I like to leave the doors wide open for students and just get some good habits in place and not say no to any subject possibilities or any university pathways, but just get good habits in place and practice those in grade 9 and 10. And it's not just organisation. There's a lot of critical thinking and deep analysis involved in the IB, academic research and writing. All of those things really matter in terms of preparing students to make a smooth transition into the IB. And then, you know, I would continue to support students through the program to make sure that they're coping. And some of what I do can be talking to students about sleep patterns, eating, exercise, if they're into it, trying to convince them to do meditation and mindfulness practices, but things that will support their academic life. And in the IB, we talk about the learner profile, 10 attributes that we want IB students to develop. And one of those, and the most important one for me, is balance, and really trying to get students and teachers to have balance.
So you also help students with university applications, as you mentioned earlier. What kind of guidance can you give students?
So again, I start working with students usually in grade 9, and really I have to work backwards from what they think they want to do when they grow up. And that's a really hard question to answer when you're 14. But trying to get students to think about what their skills are, where their passion lies, things that they're talented at. I always say to students, what are you the most interested in? Because if you read about it a lot and you watch it a lot and you talk about it a lot, that's probably a good guide. So we do a lot of work around what the end goal is, and then we work backwards from that, trying to sort of see, okay, well, if I think I want to be that when I grow up, where would I go to university to get that qualification? Where's the best place to go for that? What does that university require of me? What subjects would I have to do in the IB? Okay, that's my pathway. And getting students to think about that in grade 9 is really important, because they need to take the right prerequisite subjects in grade 9 and 10, and they need to choose the right subjects in the IB. So I do a lot of that guidance through 9 through 10. And then in grade 11, it's really getting to know the students well, looking at the grades that they're achieving in the early stages of the IB and starting to put together university lists for them, places that would be a good match for them based on lots of different factors, and it's different for every student. And then working with them on the whole application process and managing deadlines and things. So
there's often a lot of competition for particular universities. So how can a student make sure that their application stands out?
Well, I do training for IB counsellors in schools across Africa, Europe and the Middle East, my IB region, and also actually in the Asia Pacific region. So I'm supporting counsellors to do their jobs in schools to get IB students into university. And the first thing we talk about on the first day of our workshops is, what is the unique selling point of an IB student? What do IB students have that other students don't? And the research shows that they have quite a lot that makes them stand out. Universities know what attributes they come with, and they're excited about that. And so when I work with students, I try to really make them capitalize on that, make them emphasize that in their applications. think back to the ways that they've changed since they became an IB student, because the difference is quite obvious, and students really like to reflect on that and say the IB has taught me all of these skills, not just content, but very much the skills that they've got through the IB. And you asked me earlier about the challenge of the IB, and it is true that it's challenging, but I often say to students, when you take that on, you take it on with the safety net of being in a small school with an IB coordinator looking after you and a university counsellor and, small classes, and you live at home usually with somebody doing your washing and cooking for you, which you don't have at university. So all the hard stuff, the really tough academic skills and rigor, the discipline and the organisation, they learn that with a safety net. And they make mistakes with a safety net. But when they get to university, they're good at it. And the universities see that in IB students. They see that they arrive ready for university. And retention rates are quite high for IB students. And they arrive with those academic skills that they need to survive in that first year, when the transition can be pretty tough.
You talk about the safety net, Morag, and part of that must be the family or the parents of an IB student. What advice would you give to parents who have an IB student in the house?
I think it's really understanding the demands of the IB. And part of what I do with families that I work with is explain the IB to them before they start. And I try to explain it in stages, because the IB has a lot of acronyms, a lot of new terminology, a lot of stuff that parents have to understand. And that's difficult to understand. And it sometimes means that they don't quite know that it's as difficult as it is, or, they don't know how the workload is spread out. They don't know what the assessments mean. So I try to do a lot of that with the parents to say, look, this is the package that you're entering into, and this is what your son or daughter might need in terms of support. Sometimes I find myself in that role of family counsellor, where I'm sitting with a family and saying, right, let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the demands at home. Let's look at what's fair and what's not. So Jane, your daughter has just started the IB, so I'm interested to know what you knew about it before you embarked on that, what you've discovered since then, and maybe what your tips are, what you're finding is working and not working.
Sure. I did know a little bit about the IB before she started. I did do quite a bit of research myself, because I was very interested. And I have a few friends whose children have done the IB in the past, so I did know something about it. But I wasn't expecting it to be quite such a roller coaster ride, and it's only been a couple of months into it. And I would say that as a parent, even if your children are not doing subjects that you're interested in, you still need to be able to show an interest in that. So I come from an arts background. I can help her with her English literature. I can discuss her essays in talk with her. When it comes to chemistry and maths, I don't have a clue, but she still needs to talk to somebody about it. And it doesn't seem to matter that I can't actually help her with the academic side of chemistry. But if she can talk to me about what's going on, she still feels that that's helpful. So I think overall, it's listening, it's being there to listen to them at any time of the day or night.
I think you're absolutely right. And in my previous life, I was an IB coordinator, so I was running the program in an international school and several schools before that. And the reason that I do what I do is because I spent most of my time listening to students, just offloading about their stress and anxiety and workload and asking for help with things. And I think one of the sort of talents that I have, I guess, or the things that I'm lucky to have, is that I do have an overview of the whole program. And so when you mentioned earlier, maybe she spends a bit too much time on certain things, I'm able to sit with students and say, that's actually not good use of your time. It's not actually going to lead to much progress. It's not going to lead to more marks. I know you think it's important because your teachers asked you to do it, and I'm not advocating that students don't do what they're told, but really trying to work that balance piece out, because sometimes I'll talk to a student who'll say to me, I'm going to spend 2 hours on that tonight. And I think, oh, that's not a 2-hour task, and you're going to have burnout. So I actually do plans, hour by hour for students, and say, I think that that's a task that should only take you an hour, set a timer and just spend an hour on it, and doing things like that. Even yourselves at home as parents is really important, and saying, right, we're going to sit down for a meal. You're going to take regular breaks. We're going to do sport on the weekends, whatever.
Yeah, they have to lead a normal life as well, don't
Absolutely, absolutely. But the one thing I would say is that I mentioned earlier, students do go to university really well prepared, and they also come back and they say, you know what, the IB was the hardest thing I've ever done, and university is a breeze in comparison, and I'm loving it. So actually, they get to university and they can enjoy being there because they've done the hard stuff already. And I think that's really important to keep reminding students about. And I do that a lot, to say, I know you hate it now, but you're going to love it in a couple of years' time.
So, Morag, it's obvious that you're passionate about your job. Is there one area in particular that you love more than the other areas?
I'm just a problem solver, I think, Jane. You know, I love it when I sit down with a student or a family, or I go into a school and I'm given a bit of a mess to sort out, you know. I like it if I can get to students and families before there's a mess. And so I enjoy being able to work proactively in that way. But no, I really love, I love the whole puzzle. So I shouldn't say mess, it's more of a puzzle. And when I talk about university counselling, I love the pieces of that fit together to send somebody off to university, having known them for sometimes 4 years, and seeing the end result of that, and seeing the impact that being an IB student has had on them, regardless of the point score that they finish with. So yeah, for me, it's really seeing that puzzle come together really beautifully at the end.
Morag, I'm going to put your website address at the bottom of the screen now.
Okay.
That's ib-pathways.com. If people want to get in contact with you or find out more about your services, they can go to the website, and there they'll find your telephone and email address.
Yep. Email and WhatsApp, and I'm really happy to hear from people, even if it's just to find out where to start.
Great. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was a real pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Jane.